Say when?
We're good.
Go.
Thank you for coming here today. I'm joined here today by Ed Mullins, the president of the Sergeants Benevolent Association, executive board members of the New York City PBA and the Sergeants Benevolent Association, the rank and file police officers and sergeants, first responders on our city streets. There's an attitude on our city streets today that it is acceptable to resist arrest. That attitude is a direct result of the lack of respect for law enforcement, resulting from the slanderous, insulting, and unjust manner in which police officers are being portrayed by race baiters, politicians, pundits, and even our elected officials. We are here today to send a message to all criminals in every community across our city that the charge of resisting arrest is a very serious and dangerous one. The charge exists to encourage those being arrested to comply with the lawful orders of police officers so that those officers do not have to use necessary force to make that arrest. It's a serious crime, and it must be treated that way by all. We today are advising our members to be cautious while they patrol our streets. Since the Stop, Question, and Frisk law was passed and approved into law by City Hall, there is an attitude by the criminal element that resisting arrest is condoned and not taken seriously. Our members, when confronted with these situations, New York City police officers should use all the resources of the NYPD to help make that situation safe for all. Call for backup when necessary. Call your supervisors to the scene to assist in effecting that arrest. The department has rules. Use them. They protect you, they protect the citizens of the city, and they protect the department as well. Take your time and do the jobs correctly, right, and safely. New York City police officers have every right to expect to go home safely and without injury at the end of their tour. They also deserve the support of our elected officials and the citizens alike that live in our streets. In recent weeks, the reputation of New York City police officers have been tarnished by the words of many. It is outrageously insulting to all police officers to say that we go out on our streets to choke people of color. As Al Sharpton stated while seated at the table right next to our mayor at City Hall, New York City police officers have literally made neighborhoods that were unsafe livable. It is a person's behavior that leads to interaction with the police, not who they are, not what they look like, or how much money is in their pocket. It's their behavior that leads to that interaction. It is absolutely insulting to insinuate otherwise. Al Sharpton's words do nothing to build a bond between New York City police officers and the communities that we serve and protect each and every day. In fact, those words are not credible and do the opposite. They put barriers between the police and the communities that we serve, which leads to mistrust and hurts every last one of us, police officer, citizen, and tourist alike. Of course, during emotional times like this, many times the facts get lost in the rhetoric. I'd like to review some of the undisputed facts in the tragic death of custody of Mr. Garner in Staten Island, and this is not meant to lessen the fact that there was a death and it's a loss for all. First, there were numerous complaints from the merchants and the community regarding illegal activities at that location. The location was listed as a chronic condition requiring regular patrols and police action to correct that condition. 1 week before the incident, Mr. Garner was observed illegally selling loose cigarettes by police officers. He was warned to stop the illegal sale and was not placed under arrest, but was warned and admonished and sent on his way. On July 17th, Mr. Garner, who had been arrested 30 times, 8 times before for the same infraction, was observed selling loose cigarettes and was approached by police officers. Mr. Garner was informed that he was being placed under arrest for that illegal sale. When instructed to place his hands behind his back, he chose to resist. When police officers took hold of Mr. Garner's wrist in order to cuff him, he pulled away and began to physically resist arrest. Responding officers have no prior knowledge of existing serious medical problems and never do on radio runs like this. He was given several opportunities to submit peacefully to the arrest, but chose to resist. After placing him in handcuffs in response to his complaints about not being able to breathe, the police officers turned him on his side as they're trained to do and called for an ambulance to get medical assistance. Mr. Garner was breathing when medical help arrived, negating the need for CPR. You do not give CPR to a person that's breathing on their own. Unfortunately and tragically, Mr. Garner's passed away that day. Again, none of this is meant to lessen the fact that there was a loss of life that his family lives with and our police officers live with as well. Nonetheless, sometimes the facts need to be stated through the emotion of the time. We believe that every person, regardless of their economic status, should be able to walk the streets of their community free of being accosted by individuals involved in crime of any nature, including low-level quality of life crimes. A family living in Tompkinsville, Staten Island, has the same right to be able to walk the streets of their community and to be safe as those living in Park Slope, Gracie Mansion, or Central Park South. You know, we've heard a lot in the last number of weeks of what police officers can't do and what police officers shouldn't do. No one's telling us what we are able to do and what we should do when we're faced with a situation where the person being placed under arrest says, "I'm not going. I'm not being placed under arrest." What is it we should do? Walk away? We don't have that option, nor would the public who called and complained about these crimes want us to. If they called, it's important to them. I think it's important that we understand that police officers go out on this street each and every day to do a job. No one wants to deal with the loss of life. Again, it's a tragedy. We will defend these police officers. We will get experts in the use of force. This was not a chokehold. We will get medical examiners to go over this autopsy when it is finally released. I've never seen a document that was more political than that press release released by the ME's office, without any medical fact beyond it, without the release of the medical examiner's report. And that is absolutely wrong. This case and all cases should be based on the facts, nothing more or nothing less. As I said, with me here today is the president of the Sergeants Benevolent Association, Ed Mullins, to add his words.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Pat. I think what's being left out of everything that's being printed in the media is the fact that Police Officer Pintello didn't go to work that day with the intention of killing anyone. He went to work purely with the intention of doing his job. No different than any doctor, any firefighter, or any trucker that's out there today. And any one of those professions where someone unintentionally loses their life, there's no public outcry when a doctor fails to save someone, asking that he be charged for murder and be arrested. This was an unintentional death that occurred. When you look at the tape that is all over the media, no one talks about the time delay where the officers waited for assistance. There was a greater time delay of assistance and time for Eric Garner to surrender than there was in the actual scuffle itself. He chose not to. As Pat said, this is not a chokehold. A chokehold is a completely opposite tactic than what you're watching. No one talks about the officer that bounced off the plate glass window, who easily could have went through that window, and we could be talking about his death today. We don't mention that. We don't mention the fact that Gardner made clear statements that this ends today. He wasn't going to be arrested. We allow that to slide past. That's wrong too. We forget the fact that this is a nation of laws, that we all live under a nation of laws. We attack the broken windows theory until it's on each and every one of our blocks. We let it slide when it's elsewhere. We don't care until someone's urinating on your block or where there's a window broken on your block. Then it's a big issue and we want it enforced. We want justice for everyone except for a police officer. Well, Officer Pentillo has rights. He has the right to due process just like everyone else. But we're not giving him that right. We're calling for federal investigations. We're calling for outside people to come in and take over the case. We don't do that. I don't see anyone screaming in Chicago to stop the murders that are taking place out there and calling for federal investigators and the FBI to get involved to save those people. The ME's report, as Pat said, is flawed. The ME's report purely talks about a cause of death. A cause of death of homicide is purely the way a person dies. It's not a criminal charge. It places no blame on anyone, but yet we're calling for a murder charge. Al Sharpton is not a credible individual. He never has been, but yet he's all over the media. He gets front page. He's allowed to sit in City Hall and threaten the mayor. We only need to look back at Tawana Brawley, Kevin Gatto in Brooklyn, ties to organized crime with narcotics. But Al Sharpton gets to determine the direction of justice in this city. It's wrong. It's completely wrong. The media has an obligation to report the story, and you should. You should report the story, but report the complete story. Don't prosecute an officer who went to work to do his job. Tell both sides of the story. We're talking about his track record, but we leave out the fact that Mr. Gardner had 30 arrests. We leave out the fact that he had play the week before, and he was warned, and he continued. We leave out the fact that this is not a victimless crime. This is a victim crime. Okay? Selling Lucy's, there are people who suffer, business people who suffer as a result of that. We don't get to pick the laws. We enforce them. So going forward, for the members of the NYPD, we want you to do your job. We want you to follow the rule book, the way it's written. And if there's a delay in getting to the next place, so be it. But at the end of the day, each and every member of the NYPD is to go home safe. That's the bottom line. If the public is choosing to sit silent and let a good city that's been built over the last 20 years go back to the days of old and disregard crimes, whether they be minor or major, then our obligation to the members of the NYPD is to ensure that they go home safe. And that's what they should do. Call a supervisor, and I'm instructing every sergeant out there to supervise each and every arrest the way our patrol guide is designed. And we'll move on to job by job as it happens. We need public support, and the attacks on the NYPD has to stop.
Thank you, Eddie. One of the points being made constantly is people would say, well, look at the video. Well, let's look at the video. Look at the video in real time, not frame by frame. The interaction of bringing this person down to the ground, which was necessary to place him under arrest, was seconds. When you look at it frame by frame, some would say it was a long period of time and it was a chokehold. It was not a chokehold. He was a big man that had to be brought to the ground to be placed under arrest by shorter police officers. Sometimes the use of force is necessary, but it's never pretty to watch. But again, and it's happening on our streets every day in the environment we're living, that folks will say, I'm not going. That person needs to be placed under arrest. You need to comply with the police officers. There's a system. If you think you're wrong, let's go to court, have the police officers articulate why, and we'll duke it out in front of a judge, the way the system was meant to be. Not on the street when you disagree. Comply with the orders of police officers. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime. Questions?
As the commissioner called it, his words, an apparent chokehold. Have you spoken to him about that, and what is he?
I have, and I think he's mistaken. It is not a chokehold. It was bringing a person to the ground the way we're trained to do to place him under arrest. You put your arm on them and bring them down. It was not a chokehold. And we will get use of force experts to say that. Yes, sir.
The mayor says that it's important to get all sides and to bring Al Sharpton to the table. Do you think it was appropriate for him to bring Sharpton in? And how do you think the mayor has been in terms of supporting the police department?
I don't think it was appropriate. Our elected officials belong in City Hall. And we agree. Let the facts speak for themselves. That's not what's happening. That's not what's getting reported. The emotion of the street is what's happening. We say allow the investigation to move forward and let the facts lead to the conclusion, whatever that conclusion is. But what we've seen here and what we've reported is conclusions on emotion, on a document from the ME's office that is a political document not backed up by the ME's scientific report. And that's a problem, and that's why we're speaking out. We agree. A free airing does not mean the police officers are left out in the cold. The police officers don't have the same civil rights that we protect for each and every one of you each and every day. They deserve that right. That's our job, and we will do it.
Why shouldn't he bring Sharpton to be part of the conversation?
Elected officials should have that discussion. Community meetings should have that discussion. Were there any pro-police community leaders at that roundtable that said, wait a minute, I remember when I couldn't walk to services and safety because the mopes on the corner would rob me. I remember when I couldn't walk by without a beggar accosting me. I remember when I couldn't get off the bridge and a squeegee person would accost me. There was no pro-police to say, this city is different today because of the men and women that patrol our streets. New York City police officers have thousands and thousands of interactions with the public each and every day. Without complaint, they call, we service their complaints, and all leave satisfied. That gets lost. Where was that voice at the table?
The gentleman who videotaped it, Ramsey Order, was arrested, as we know, over the weekend. He's now saying he was set up, and the cops who arrested him says what goes around comes around. Your reaction?
The police officers that observed that had no idea who he was. They were doing their job. What gets lost in that is he had a gun. He was carrying a weapon. Part of the reason we were on those street corners in Tompkinsville, drug dealers, panhandlers, people carrying weapons. That gets lost in the reporting as well. He was arrested for carrying a gun. The only use a person with that criminal record had for carrying the gun is to increase his criminal record.
Yeah, Pat, how concerned are you with Sharpton's, expanding platform, and do you believe he has the ear of the mayor?
I do not believe he has credibility. I believe he has an opinion, and we will protect his right to give that opinion. But he doesn't have the right to make up facts. He shouldn't have the right to sit at the lead table at City Hall and stir up the streets where it becomes dangerous for police officers. If it becomes dangerous for police officers, what chance does the public have? I don't believe his voice, his reasoning should get more credit than the average citizen on the street that has credibility, or New York City police officers who absolutely have credibility based on the work we've done, the characters we have, and the citizens of the city appreciate the fact that we go out and put ourselves at risk. We talk often about, it's a terrible tragedy when there's a loss of life. We've experienced that on both ends. We've experienced that when police officers lose their lives, and they do. And it's shocking to the entire community, and it should be. We understand that loss, and we never want to lessen it.
Do you think that there are more assaults on police officers?
Absolutely. There's more assaults on police officers because of the attitude and the pundits and the electeds that are jumping on the backs of police officers who are protecting their rights to say that. We had a police officer patrolling our housing complexes that was called there because they're smoking drugs and dealing drunks in the lobby of their homes. And what happened? That police officer had their teeth knocked out. Resisting arrest is a serious crime. Everyone must take it seriously. It must be charged seriously. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Mr. Lynch, I believe you or some of the other union officials, you had spoken with some of the other officers who were present on July 17th. Can you tell us what the scuffle looked like from their eyes and whether they heard Mr. Garner say, "I can't"?
We've only spoken to them for their well-being, how they're doing, how they're holding up on the barrage of bad stories and the negativity. They have attorneys who handle this case, interview them when the department or any other agency wants to interview them. Our goal at that point is to get them representation, and then for us to literally say, how are you doing? What do you need? How's your family holding up?
Have they spoken to the department or investigators yet?
That's an attorney question. I'll get you that answer.
Hi. Can you talk at all about the decision to make the arrest at that point of time? Would it have been possible for the officer just to give a summons or to try and talk him down a little more, or call for additional backup? Was there any alternative to grabbing him?
At that situation, no. Was there an alternative and he was warned and admonished and sent on his way in the past? Yes. If that had corrected the problem, they would not have been in that corner. But he chose to come back and commit the crime again. We agree at times you should say, move on, pal. You can't do that here. Next time, you're going to be arrested. This time it's on me, next time it's on you. He chose to come back. He was arrested 30 times, 8 times for that same infraction in that same location. Again, it was a tragedy, but police officers don't have all the information or the Monday morning quarterbacking that goes on now. We make our decisions in real time at that location at the time. Yes, sir.
Pat, what do you think of the mayor's handling all of this?
I think the mayor needs to support New York City police officers, unequivocally say it, and unequivocally saying resisting arrest hurts everyone, police officers and citizens alike, and it will not be tolerated.
Hasn't he said that, though, Pat?
He needs to say it, and he needs to say it forcefully. The police officers do not feel that they're getting the support that they need for the job that they do, and they proved they do it right, they do it constitutionally, and they do it well. Yes, ma'am.
In years past, you've complained about productivity goals or quotas. Is that something that's still an issue, are you worried about depolicing, about officers just kind of not doing their job at all?
One of the problems we talk about with the stop, question, and frisk, and we've been very vocal on this issue for a number of years. The problem was not the stop, questioning, and frisk. It was the department's reliance on numbers for the sake of numbers. It was quotas. The problem we have with the city council and with the court's decision is that it did not address the real problem that led to the friction on the street. It wasn't a tactic of stop, question, and frisk when used constitutionally the way it should be, the way we want to use it. It's effective across the country. The problem was saying, officer, where's your 5 250s, which is a stop, question, and frisk form. That was the problem. In the emotion, again, the facts got lost. No one wanted to address the fact that it was quotas, not the technique.
What about depolicing, though? Are you worried that officers now are going to just say, screw it?
I think that every citizen of the city, regardless of their neighborhood, deserves to live free of crime. I don't think we should go back to the days when we left them on their own. You're on your own. We're not coming to save you. We're just responding. I think it's important that we do our job. We also think it's important for our members to do their job right, carefully, and understand that if there's a mistake, you're not going to get support.
When you talk about the video very quickly,
Yes, sir.
You're going to use the video, community will use the video. A lot of people are sending us videos now, but they say quite often the police are trying to stop them from videotaping. I mean, your reaction to, what do you tell officers? Because people have sent us videos where cops are knocking the phones out of their hands.
Police officers are not out there on a regular basis trying to stop video. There's a number of points. It's a good question. First off, you cannot interfere with a police action. That becomes dangerous for everyone. That's number one. You cannot do that. But more importantly than that is a video started now does not tell the whole story of why we were on that corner. It does not show the infraction that led to the interaction. It doesn't show the behavior of the individual. It just shows at the time when they're being told they're placed under arrest. And as we stated, now it's fashionable to resist arrest. It has to stop today. The video never tells the whole story. Again, this video, in this tragedy, look at it in real time, not frame by frame.
So,
Yes, sir.
The incident the week prior, which was wanted and admonished, were any of those officers among the group with him the day that he died?
That's a lawyer's question.
Over here,
Pat, are you?
Okay, I'll get there next. Sorry. Yes, ma'am.
So in responding and asking for backup or sergeant supervision on every incident or interaction.
Radio run.
Then are you suggesting this is going to slow down police response? Or?
I'm suggesting clearly that our police officers need to do their job. They need to do it safely for themselves and for the public. The rules are made for a reason. Use them. It's their rules. There's a reason they're there. Use them so we can effectively do our job. Police officers deserve to go home at the end of the day in the same shape that they arrived. That's not happening now. That didn't happen for that police officer who had her teeth knocked out. It's important that we do our job. We're city residents. We want the job done. We want it done effectively. We want it done safely. It's not about how fast it's done. It's about how correctly it's done, especially if there's a mistake and the police officers won't get the benefit of the doubt.
So you really wanted to abide the book?
The book is there for a reason. It's their book. We should use the book and go by the book. It's their rules.
You said that, going back to the mayor comment, you said that the mayor should be, full-throated in his support. Do you think he's being political right now?
That's a question for the mayor. What I know is my members are not hearing the support on the street. We're hearing let the facts speak as they will, but that's not what's happening. He needs to say unequivocally, let the facts speak where they are, let the investigation move forward, and equally important, you cannot assault a New York City police officer. Yes, I'm sorry.
You said that it's fashionable to resist arrest. Can you just explain, with the crime drop since the 90s that people have seen, why are the police not more supported, and how did it get to this point that you're saying it's fashionable to resist arrest?
I think the police officers are more supported for a number of reasons. First off, when you're safe on the streets, sometimes you take it for granted. Gray hair shows that what the streets were like at one time, and it was police officers around the city that made it safe. So that's an important aspect. We're not being supported because those that are critical to police officers, race baiters, Al Sharptons, whose business is to stir the street, not make the safe street. They're being put on a pedestal while police officers are being knocked down off that step. It's police officers you call when all goes wrong. The only ones that'll dial Al Sharpton is someone that just got locked up with a gun and wants to be saved. The people that call the police are the folks that want to be saved from the man with a gun. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned before you think the Emmys report was political, but the Emmy is supposed to, the Emmys report is supposed to be a scientific fact that we go off of. What do you mean by it being political, and why do you think that would have been?
Ma'am, I agree with you. It should be a scientific fact backed up by the medical examiner's report. We've spoken to experts that never seen it released the way it was, without the medical facts behind it, without the medical examiner's report, and in parentheses, chokehold. That's not a medical term. The rest we'll look at. Was the autopsy done correctly? With all the specimens examined? It's a technical question, but we will examine that to make sure our police officers' rights aren't trampled. Yes, sir.
If not a chokehold, how would you describe the maneuver that Officer Fenton used? Do you think it's appropriate?
This was a large man who was resisting arrest. He had to be brought to the ground the way we're trained. It's the safest place. Put them on the ground and place them under arrest. Reaching up to bring him down, a struggle ensued. When there's a struggle in real time, when there's a plate glass window behind you and the person is resisting arrest, it's dangerous. It was about grabbing a person who chose and said, I will not be placed under arrest. It's a dangerous situation for police officers, and we've had deaths in those situations. We had a police officer die of a wound by glass up in the Bronx many years ago, bled to death. That's not what we want to see. Our police officers need to protect themselves.
Can you tell us if that officer Fenton?
I will. I'll come back. Yes.
So do you believe that the officers were 100% correct? And then what are your thoughts on the mayor and commissioners called to retrain all of these officers?
First off, training as a union, as police officers, we are always in favor of more training. The more training we get, the better we are at our job. We're not trained properly or aggressively. You need training beyond when you graduate the police academy. You need real training with your colleagues on a regular basis. Again, we spoke about our patrol guide that tells us what we can't do, what we shouldn't do. But it doesn't tell us what we should do and can do when someone says, I'm not being placed under arrest, and the police officer has no other option but to use necessary physical force. Over here.
Could you tell us a bit about Officer Campanella? Why did you become police officer? How long have you been on the plantation? What most of his time is with him?
The questions I can't answer. He's a good police officer, well over 200 arrests, a police officer that goes out and lives in this city, a city resident that goes out and does a difficult job and was put in a difficult situation. Look, he's distraught over the fact that there was a loss of life. No one wants to live with the fact, because of the job I do and the circumstances I'm put in, that someone lost their life. That's difficult to deal with. The family lives with that, and we're not lessening that. That's serious, and I don't believe that loss or pain ever goes away. But a police officer has to live with that too, especially when report after report, based on nothing but emotion, says you were wrong. As Sergeant Mullins said, we don't go out to hurt anyone. We go out to do a difficult job. Like a doctor who sometimes loses a patient. Firefighter who can't get to that floor to get a victim out. Unfortunately, the reality of our job is tragic things do happen.
You said that Eric Garner had a history with police. Over the weekend, another story broke. A woman who has no criminal history, seen on videotape, dragged out of her apartment only in her underwear. And she said police knocked on the wrong door and arrested her and her family for something that didn't happen. Your reaction to that? Because they say they're fighting those charges.
Police officers responded to that location based on a 911 call of a child abuse call. When the child came to the door, looked like her face, I understand it from reports in the media, that the face had marks on it. The problem with that situation is resisting arrest. If you think you're wronged, comply with the police officers. It will be sorted out. She has every right to dispute that arrest if she so chooses. But police officers have every right to say, we're going to a 911 call of child abuse. What if they walked away from that door? What if a month later we were called back to that door and we find that there was child abuse? Is that right? Is it right for a police officer to walk away? Someone called. We don't have the ability standing in that hallway like an attorney does in a courtroom to parse each piece second by second. We do it now. We go on our training. We go on our instincts. You shouldn't resist arrest.
Do you fear the investigation of the Garner incident will be somehow not impartial?
Yes, absolutely. Every signal thus far has pointed that direction. Now, what I believe is that allow the district attorney to do their job. The district attorney in Staten Island is a competent person, so I don't want to say that he won't do his job. Time will tell. But for everyone to call, many to call, the pundits to call saying a federal investigation before the initial investigation is done, based on what? How do we know it's not going to be done correctly? I think we as police officers and the citizens should base all conclusions on the fact and the investigation, nothing more. Yes, sir.
Mr. Lynch, given the increase of eyewitness video, do you think body cameras would capture that greater context of the arrest?
That's an option that we need to talk about. I know a judge said it should happen, but no one's had discussions in how it works or how it doesn't work. Does it help or it doesn't help? So we'll hold off that conclusion until we have that discussion, until we see the data that says otherwise, whether it's good or not. So the conclusion is, wait and see.
You talked about the battle days, the squeegee man, etc.
Yeah.
When it comes to broken windows, do you feel that some communities are unfairly antagonized? Do you understand why they're not, or why they do feel that way? And is there a way to be more measured?
I think every community, no matter what the ethnic situation in that neighborhood is, the economic situation is that neighborhood, I think they have a right to walk down their street free of being accosted. We tell our police officers always, sometimes you're dealing with the criminal on the corner. But remember, while you're focused on that criminal on the corner, There's a man or woman who's leaving their apartment in the morning, walking to the subway to go to work, commits no crime, as entitled to walk freely and safely on that street, and you don't see that person until they get off the subway, they walk back to their apartment, to their family each and every day. That person has the right not to have someone urinate on their stoop. That person has the right to live without being accosted by drug dealers on the corner. And besides the squeegee men we dealt with in the past, during that time, the homicide rate was through the roof. So it wasn't just based on a nuisance on the corner. It was life and death. Unfortunately, at the time, death was winning.
Is there a direct correlation, though? I mean, do you really believe that the guy who's the squeegee guy is the same guy who's going to kill somebody?
There's a theory. That's a question for the department and the policies that they set. The policies by City Hall, for instance, Lucy's. If they want us to go after that crime, we'll go after that crime. If they change their policy and say ignore it, we ignore it. We don't set policy on the street. We're police officers that have to follow the law. If City Hall wants to not do that, just let us know. Our police officers will do their job. We go by the rules. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate you taking the time to cover this here today, and I appreciate everything that you're writing. Hopefully, on moving forward, that'll change from what was in the past. Thank you. Thanks, Eddie.
Hey, Al, how do we say the officer's last name? I heard it say previously.